Join us by the fireside for our evening tales of true life strange experiences with things that lie beyond the veil of the known and into the misty depths of the mysterious and unknown. The shadow entity. My husband, at that time, and I had moved into a new place, and this was a little over a month prior to this event. So for about a week, I had actually had some really bad feelings around our bedroom door area, which opened onto a landing at the top of the stairs. I couldn't sleep with the door open for some reason. A problem I'd never had before. When we'd previously always slept with it open, I would look at the rectangle of darkness and I would just get this bad, bad feeling. And I have to get up and close the door before I could even go to sleep. That's how bad it was. And then that wasn't enough to put me at ease even. So I made my husband switch sides of the bed with me so that I was furthest from the door. Nothing like that had ever happened to me, as I just mentioned before. I don't remember being overly scared of the dark as a child, and certainly not as an adult. Not like that. So the night this thing happened, I woke up and I saw this dark figure standing over me. And it was actually leaning right in my face. It was so dark. It was kind of like that Vanta black paint that just absorbs all the light around it. I don't know how else to describe it. There was no discernible arms or legs, and its silhouette looked like it was wearing a full body cape or something. He definitely felt male, although he didn't feel human at all, if that makes any sense. My impression was that he was there with the express purpose of terrifying me, and that he had been waiting for me to wake up so that I could see him and so that I could be terrified by him. I can't say that I exactly felt threatened physically, but I can say that his presence was definitely emitting an extremely malevolent vibe at me. The other overwhelming feeling I had was that I was being observed really, really deeply. It was like he could see right into me, and this isn't something that, a person could do. This was like a different feeling altogether. Very, very scary. I couldn't make out any facial features on him. I didn't see any eyes. But nonetheless, I knew that I was being very, very intently observed. So I made a noise or tried to scream or whatever. I was kind of in shock. And my husband grabbed my arm and suddenly this thing was gone. Now, this happened about 12 years ago, and I had honestly never heard of shadow people or anything like that before. And then a friend mentioned hearing about them on the Art Bell show. And I said, whoa, that happened to me. And of course, I went down the internet and I just searched for everything on shadow people. And I sort of became obsessed, and I kept reliving this experience, which basically resulted in me living in a state of fear. And this lasted for about 6 months. I was literally jumping at my own shadow. This was a kind of PTSD. I actually couldn't sleep on my back anymore for fear that he would come again. And I still often put the covers over my head or slept with my head under the pillow, which, wasn't very comfortable. I've sometimes wondered if my ex-husband might have attracted or generated this thing. I have read some theories about substance abuse and shadow people. There were some nights when my husband was so intoxicated that he would seem like another person. And I just hated him, when he was like that. And he was prone to sleepwalking and sleep talking when he'd had too much to drink. And he actually came and stood over me once in the exact same spot as the shadow man. And this was about a week after it happened. And it totally, totally just freaked me out. Or maybe my anger at my husband, attracted this negative entity. I don't really know. Also, a few weeks before this happened, I did wake up to find my husband gone and the front door was wide open. When I went down the stairs to close the door, I realized he was at the back door, fumbling to get in. He had apparently just sleptwalked his way right out of the front door. Now, obviously, this made me feel extremely unsafe and angry that his drinking was taking over and was leaving me completely vulnerable, asleep in our bed with the front door wide open at 3 a.m. Maybe, and I wondered about this later, maybe the open door invited something in. The front door opened right onto the stairs, which led right up to our bedroom door, which, is kind of a weird layout in itself. I also sometimes wondered if a spirit took him over when he drank, like a kind of possession. So not a good thing at all, but I have a feeling that it's connected. And incidentally, after talking about it with my family, I did learn that my mother actually, and stepfather, and younger sister had all had shadow person experiences as well. My mom's was the crouching in the corner type of thing, featureless but with the same penetrating, malevolent gaze. My sister saw hers when we were very young and we were sharing a bedroom. Hers was a hat man, standing in the doorway to our bedroom. She didn't feel afraid. And my stepfather's was identical to mine, with this shadow person standing over him in his bed. My stepfather is one of the most literally boring people I know, not prone to speculation about the universe whatsoever, or fantasy. So to hear that he had this same experience was quite significant to me. I will say this was one of the worst experiences of my life. Up to that point, I didn't have a concept of what true evil is. And now, after experiencing that being and the way it was looking at me, I do. Well, that is interesting. It says two possible scenarios. It could be something that runs in the family. Maybe at some point there was a family member on your side who was dabbling, in black magic, or some kind of dark witchcraft, or even just using Ouija boards or doing incantations and things might have brought some of these things up that are now kind of haunting your whole family, including yourself. Or it could indeed be an entity that is hanging around your husband, especially since he obviously sounds like he's having a problem with alcohol, which quite often there are entities around those kind of situations, people who are having problems with alcohol, drugs, and so on. So, wow, that must have been so terrifying for that to wake up, to open your eyes and see this thing so close to your face like that. I will say, it certainly does work, to terrify someone. If that was its aim, it certainly works. I was attacked. Well, at the time, I was working on a set for a series as a camera operator on their show. And we were filming in the Pine Barrens for the Jersey Devil episode. Now, there'd been a lot of set vandalism, so I had started camping at the set every night to see if I could catch whoever or whatever was doing it. I'd been doing it for 7 nights, but had never been able to catch anything. And usually I would hear weird sounds and stuff being broken, jump up and scramble for the trailer door, only to find the vandal had already gone. So by the seventh night, the crew and I were just getting kind of tired of this, as there was now several $1,000s worth of damage going on, and it just kept happening. One of the lifts suggested staking out around set so we would have a better chance of success. Come that night, I, and along with both lifts, the producer and one of our audio guys and a makeup artist, were staggered around the set, just waiting. I was in the rundown house behind the busted wall, a small handheld camera in my hand so I could at least get a picture of the vandal if nobody caught them. It was around 2:40 a.m. I started hearing stuff on the roof, and I began creeping out of my hiding spot. My plan was to climb the broken wall, stick my camera and head through a hole in the ceiling that we had made for lighting and effects, and then take a picture. Then climb onto the roof to either grab them or scare them towards one of the lifts, who was hiding next to the house. I'd just gotten my head through and I was raising the camera when I saw it. And unfortunately, it saw me. I didn't even get the chance to scream before it was on me. It bit into my shoulder and I slipped. We both went falling down into the house where it landed on top of me. The jolt from the fall forced it to let go of my shoulder, but in doing so, it only got angrier. It took a swing at me with its claws, and I rolled to the side, getting my right side slashed. By now, everyone heard the commotion and came running. Our audio guy had the foresight to bring a small handgun and drew it. It didn't notice, as it was way too focused on me, who by now was in its claws. And it tried taking off through the roof hole but couldn't fit, so it dropped me. I fell the 10 feet to the floor while the audio guy kept firing until he couldn't see it anymore. Nobody wanted to wait for an ambulance, afraid that it might come back. So one of the lift guys slung me over his back and everyone took off running. They guessed it was still pretty pissed as it followed them, dive-bombed both the group and the car as everyone fled. It only stopped when they finally reached the boundaries of the Barrens. I woke up in the hospital a few hours later. By now, the Forest Patrol, police, news reporters, journalists, and a network guy had gathered. Nobody knew what to tell anyone. We all doubted anyone would believe it if we cried Jersey Devil. So we just said it was a bear and kept it at that. I came away with a broken neck, 3 bruised and cracked ribs, 2 lacerations on my side, a series of puncture wounds on my shoulder, and PTSD. The on-set shoot was cancelled and we ended up just renting a campsite in California to film. None of us really talk about it. I think I'm the only one who feels comfortable telling people. We still work for the show on and off, but tend to avoid the big poster that shows the location, where we were at, in the producer's office. I know it seems hard to believe, but it happened, and I still have the scars. Now, I think that thing was the Jersey Devil, but, I can't say for sure. Whatever it was some kind of horrific monster. It was definitely not human. It wasn't a known animal. It was, I couldn't even really look at it properly. It happened so fast and I was so terrified during the attack. I just remember seeing these red eyes and these huge claws as this thing just got to me. And I'm not sure what the others have to say about it because it's like a lot of them don't really want to talk about it. So, but whatever it was not human. It was not an animal as we know it. Well, I wonder what that was. Was it the Jersey Devil? It could be anything. Could have been a Bigfoot kind of creature or, something. I mean, people give labels to these things, but who's to say what it is? Skinwalker? Who's to say? It could be, you could give it a lot of different names and labels and things, but either way, these are definitely monsters, things that seem to hate human beings. Perhaps they hate all life, all living things, because animals are being killed too. But really glad to hear that you got out of there, and it's pretty amazing that you had an experience like that and attacked by something that's definitely not a known animal. My demons. This November, I was practicing a certain type of meditation before sleep, and I suddenly one day heard a voice in my right ear. It was understandable. It was just some grumbling. It did not appear to originate outside, but it was kind of inside my mind, so to speak, although it clearly affected my ear. I could feel it in my ear, like when you clean your ears or something. I've experienced something like this before in meditation, so I just ignored it and kept practicing. But then I heard it again, and then I felt something like a meditative purification where an emotion comes up from the depths of your subconscious and sort of washes over you and leaves. However, this time I felt fear, a very deep fear. So I opened my eyes and I saw a non-physical entity moving away from my body. The entity resembled what people call a frozen column of light. It was at most 3 feet tall and like a cross between a crystal and a blob of light. Not uniformly bright, not very bright at all, I would say, but it was transparent and with some kind of brighter parts to it. Then I felt fear just wash over my whole body. It wasn't the worst kind of fear I've ever had, but it was, still fear. But I also felt somewhat amused by the situation, like I was sort of observing it from outside of myself. The whole situation felt like somebody just got mad at me, grumbled something under their breath, clenched their fists, and walked away. I turned on the light and I sat up for a bit. I immediately realized that a kind of cloud that had been hanging over me for a while was now gone. My mind just felt more clear and I felt happier, although it would take me some time to fully recover. In the days following, I had a big improvement in my meditation too. It was like there had been this entity that had caused me to not be able to quiet or clear my mind, and now it was gone. I didn't get the sense that the thing was very powerful. It was more like, I don't know, Slimer from Ghostbusters. I have the sense that the mental disquiet is a side effect rather than something the entity is doing on purpose. It does not like a loving, ordered mind, so maybe it both needs and creates the disorganization. This experience reminds me of what I once read, and that is that these entities are parasites, and they are their own kind of life form, not spirits or demonic hell beings or whatever, but they're kind of just like parasites. However, there are also different kinds, and some of them are worse than others, and there are, of course, demonic beings and things like that. But overall, some of these just seem to be kind of like parasitic things. They sort of feed off your emotions or something, off negative emotions. Sometimes I thought it might be trying to come back too, but I can repel it with my energy field, and I haven't been bothered since performing a banishing ritual as well. So those last two things could be my imagination, of course, but I don't have any serious mental problems and have been doing great since I purged this entity. I mean, I can't even begin to describe how much lighter I feel, like this darkness has been lifted out of me. So it's very, very tangible. The only other time that I have kind of had a strange and very frightening experience was there was this what I call a zone of fear experience, and it happened on the Laurel Highlands hiking trail in western Pennsylvania. This particular zone was a small bottomland area, and I had to hike through it after crossing a road. Now, this was the worst fear I've ever had in my life, even much worse than the one I mentioned above. It was like an existential dread. It's almost like there are no words to describe it. I thought about quitting the trail and just hitching out of there, but convinced myself to just keep going on. When I left the area, the impression I got was that this was like a residual kind of horror energy from a body that had been dumped there, or something gruesome and traumatic that had actually happened right in that spot where I walked through. I don't think Bigfoot would be as scary as that. So I definitely think this was something very gruesome that was done right in there. So those are probably the two main, most frightening experiences I've ever had. And, the previous one was definitely the worst. And even though I didn't see anything, that feeling of dread was so intense that it really had a very, very clear effect on my mental state at that moment. Sounds like you have some pretty good ideas of what happened to you, especially with that kind of entity, demon thing, whatever that was, that seemed to come out of your consciousness. Um, I've heard something along the lines of certain negative emotions that can eventually become like embodiments, temporary embodiments with their own kind of intelligence that last for a while, like thought forms, I think they're called. And that kind of made me wonder if it could have been something like that too. Or perhaps it is an actual, entity with its own being, I guess. Hard to say. And that second story, that definitely sounds like a good assessment of what probably happened there. Some traumatic, horrible emotional trauma, perhaps in that one spot. An amazing experience. This event occurred at 3 a.m. early in the morning, and it was after Easter Sunday. I was woken up to this feeling like something had pricked my heart. That's the only way I can describe it. When I woke up, I noticed how eerily still and quiet things were. I had this really strange urge to look outside or go outside. To me, it was too direct and it frightened me. I sent some most likely paranoid sounding messages to friends that were up, letting them know it truly feels like there's an alien intelligence or something trying to make contact with me. As I'm sending these messages, my phone just goes off. And then there's a tornado warning for my area. And I swear I could feel the pressure difference due to it. Now, I'm freaked out a bit more, but just leave a light on next to my bed and lay down. And that's when this figure begins to materialize. It was this vibrating, multicolor, geometrical, humanoid type of being. And I'd say it was in my room, but really it was like it wasn't hindered by my house's structure. It was like it was made of some ultrasonic standing wave, not affected by my walls or something. I could see with both pineal gland, third eye, and both of my normal eyes. Now, there was a distinct alignment in my spine, like all of it was fully connected and working, just as it should be. This being reached its hand out to me, and not having any fear or wanting to miss out on something so strange, I just went with it. The next 3 days and nights, I had radically extended range of perception and was able to peer into the cause of anything I looked at. During the night, it was all taken up a notch, and I was basically given a tour by this new friend of what I can only imagine is from a world of people that we should be aware of and working with, but are not. Luckily, I remember everything that happened, and I know that this is going to happen again to me. But I need to be in a good place in life, etc., to feel comfortable enough to go back. I want to learn as much as I can about this place where they're from, and it seems like I'm welcome at any time, and I know to come back from it, which is something that worried me, but I figured it out after being very exhausted from not sleeping much. So, I still am wondering why this being chose to, come and contact me. What was it about me, and why did it decide on me? I have no idea. But all I know is that this has been an absolutely incredible experience, and it's just changed me and changed my life. Well, I kind of wonder if perhaps you were having some kind of astral out of body experience or something. That's sort of what it sounds like. And you were meeting up with this being who was either an extraterrestrial or just, an entity from another dimension of some kind. Um, so, yeah, certainly fascinating experience. And would have liked to have learnt more about what you actually saw, about the place you visited, perhaps if it took you somewhere. It's sounds fascinating.